we are. Everything's working, I think. Clock's ticking. My mic is hot. Sound is on. Bring the music down. Hello, everybody. How's it going? Happy Friday. Hope you're doing well. I am still trying to figure out this YouTube thing out and where my place is, if there is a place for me in the YouTuberverse. So I really like doing live stuff. Mainly that caters to my ADHD and the spontaneity. YouTube likes consistency and structure, and my brain doesn't work that way. So we're still trying, see if we can find our way in the YouTuberverse, see if we can find a place for us to work. And that was the wrong button. There we go. So what are we doing here today? This is going to be, I love headlines in the world news and stuff that's going on. And there's so much interesting stuff happening right now. Just going to cover some headlines and stuff that I think are of interest and give my 2 cents on, see if this stuff interests you guys. But before I get into all that, first I want to thank the few subscribers we have right now. If you haven't subscribed yet and you're willing to do so, be greatly appreciated. If you subscribed already, if you continue to support us by either like, commenting, or sharing. So I'm not even sure where to start with all the headlines we've had this week. You know, some of the big stuff, of course, is Iran and Trump and everything going on over there. And what gets to be kind of a mess for, today's wars and stuff like that is the instant ability to report on it. And why do I see that as a problem? In the past, because stuff doesn't, wars, they may initiate quickly, but they don't develop always quickly. And, we're such a on-demand instant response society now that we want to hear every second of it. And as soon as something's announced, we either want to dispel it, prove it wrong, make sure the results are exactly what's said instantaneously. And then something is reported to counter that. And yeah, the too much screen time, the availability of the internet to put up counterpoints immediately, blow holes in things, whether you like Trump or hate the war, that kind of stuff. We get, legacy media blowing into it immediately, countering it with now finding out some of the stuff is not factual, that it's unsubstantiated, poor sources. I'm referring to CNN right now. And so it just gets a lot of anxiety, especially if you follow it closely. It's hard not to get sucked into that stuff and ride the negative part of it. And, the fear mongering, that kind of crap. That's where a lot of screen time can really be bad for you as an individual. The mental roller coaster you put yourself through watching that crap as it goes up and down, and oh man, it's over. Now things are going to go back to normal. I was, when I bought into the ceasefire thing immediately. I mean, I want to remain optimistic, of course, but I want it to return to the way it was immediately. I want gas prices down. I want, that kind of stuff. And, and stuff doesn't happen that quickly. It never does. And in the past, when we've had these conflicts around the world and stuff, it doesn't. Yes, it's always great to have that news quickly and be optimistic and, oh my gosh, it's over. It doesn't always end that way. It doesn't end that quickly, usually, unfortunately. But, something that went along with that war, headlines of this week, last weekend, they rescued that pilot, U.S. pilot from the F-15. Actually, it was a weapons officer, but a lot of us end up calling him pilot just for simplicity because not everybody understands what a weapons officer is, but he was basically in the back seat. Pilot's in the front, weapons officers in the rear. The weapons officer is a colonel. I don't think they've released his name yet either. I had a hard time looking for that. I could not find his name. But anyways, so they were shot down over Iran, and the media picked up on some of it quickly. And then somebody inside the White House or, inside the government leaked out that the second wasn't found, which triggered the Iranians to do a massive campaign to try and find this pilot, offering reward money and all that stuff. And Trump was really ticked off about that deal, as he should, because that means somebody within the government's leaking information to the media, and it's delicate information. It could cost the life of this pilot. And that's the bigger picture here is why is the media so willing to risk a pilot's life just for engagement and clicks? That's the side of this world that really disheartens me and gives you that negative feeling about the future of society. And hopefully it corrects itself at some point. But anyways, so like I said, that triggered the Iranians offering a huge reward and then just covering their countryside trying to find this pilot first, and that could have been a huge, just it would have been a lot of negative stuff if they would have captured him. You could see them marching him down the street, doing some sort of kangaroo court crap and then hanging him on social media or whatever for the world to see that we captured this U.S. pilot and then convicted him of war crimes. And then because of that, we justified killing him, that kind of stuff. Yeah, it could have spiraled out really quickly if that pilot would have been captured by the Iranians. So I understand Trump's frustration with the media releasing stuff, or somebody within the government releasing it to the media that this pilot wasn't, found right away and he was still alive. Yeah, but I mean, what a massive show of, our abilities to be able to pull off, and if you're not familiar with the details of this rescue, Trump just basically went all in on finding this pilot. By that, I mean, there was hundreds of, troops, special forces units, all this stuff deployed to find this one pilot. And this is something that our government has never done before. And, you look at stuff like Benghazi and, oh my God, at Mogadishu, Black Hawk Down, that deal, where, we left our guys behind to pay the ultimate price and then even put on display and, it's just some really horrendous, ugly stuff. So I admire Trump for taking the initiative to prevent something like happening, the value of the life of our soldiers, our troops, to say, no, we're not going to leave this guy behind. So anyway, so they had this operation. They flew C-130s into Iran, which is a large cargo plane, 4-engine, if you're not familiar, big cargo plane. And they had helicopters in the back. And they established a makeshift runway inside Iran. So if you think we're not winning this war, that just proves it right there that Iran does not have the ability to even stop us from landing inside their country with a rescue mission on their ground. They couldn't take it. I mean, they may have got a lucky shot taking one of our birds down, but they couldn't prevent us from going in with hundreds of troops to rescue one pilot. So anyways, make a makeshift runway. They land C-130s in the middle of Iran, unload helicopters. SEAL Team 6 or whatever it's called. Sorry if I messed up the name. But anyways, they deployed in the helicopters, search and rescue mission, find this pilot, bring him back to the makeshift runway. The C-130s they used to get there get stuck in the sand. So they're not even able to fly out on the birds they came in on. Then they had to dispatch more C-130s to come back to load the helicopters into, because the helicopters weren't able to make that flight, too far a distance for helicopter type stuff and too slow or whatever the technical reason is, was something along that lines. And they burned a couple C-130s to the ground. So there was no information left behind or technology that the Iranians could use, and flew back, and this was estimates are around 300 troops were involved with this. And then plus the loss of extra aircraft for one person's life, and no other lives were lost to my knowledge. So if you think we're losing the war with Iran, Iran doesn't have the ability right now to defend itself, at least not on that level. I mean, they can still strangle Hormuz with, because that's a choke point, and they can use shoulder fired weapons and stuff like that. But their ability to take down aircraft, it's it's very limited compared to what it was before the war. But yeah, we don't have to dwell on that too much. But yeah, then transitioning to Hormuz, part of this peace agreement. So yeah, so the U.S. and Iran came up with a peace agreement or a tentative ceasefire to work on a peace agreement. That was midweek, Wednesday-ish, somewhere around there. And to show you how volatile oil prices are, it triggered immediate response in the oil market. Oil, you know, and the reason the importance on the oil prices is oil is sold per barrel, and it is what determines our fuel prices. So when oil prices go down, our fuel prices go down. It doesn't happen instantly, but it's a good indicator of trends and what's going to happen in the near future. So oil prices at the peak of the war, it was like $115 a barrel. And before the war started, it was $67. And the day peace was announced, or the ceasefire, it's not peace yet, it's a ceasefire agreement. Oil prices were $113 a barrel in the morning. And after the ceasefire was announced, it went down to $90. And then the next morning, oil prices, the market started out at $70 a barrel. So it's very volatile on world news, not just, they don't raise oil prices because it's more difficult to get oil or they're having some difficulty. So now we got to turn it back on the customer. No, it's triggered by world events, unfortunately. And as much as that's not fair, there ain't a lot we can do about it. All we can do is cross our fingers and hopes it resolves soon so we don't have to deal with this anymore. But yeah, so that shows you how quickly the oil market changes. Of course, we're not going to see gas prices change immediately as a result. At the time of, right now in my state, it's like $3.68 a gallon for unleaded and $5.19 for diesel. And I think I saw an average national average for gasoline is like $4.16. So, and then looking back on history in 2022, June, that's kind of the most recent time we had gas prices higher than this. Back then gas was over $4 a gallon and diesel was almost $6 a gallon. So in recent history, it's still not as bad as it's been, so that's that little ray of sunshine. But like I said, with the announcement of the ceasefire, oil prices are already retreating, back to the way they were. So hopefully the way gas prices will go down is if it stays down. So we're going to have some wild fluctuations here for a while as this ceasefire agreement sorts out. So if it leads to a true peace treaty and, we stop farting in the Middle East, popping off weapons, whatever you want to call it, that it should start to wind down, And what that's triggered is, so Daisy Chance, another headline this week is Trump has been pushing to get out of NATO for a long time, and I think he's trying to make his case for it every time something like this happens, meaning a war, a conflict, which involves NATO nations. And, in direct relationship to this, we were dragged into Ukraine, because we're a part of NATO and NATO nations wanted to defend Ukraine. And, the previous administration, meaning Biden's presidency, they funneled a lot of money and weapons to the Ukraine to keep that going. And not here to argue the justification of the Ukraine war right now, but anyways, showing that NATO nations has the power to drag in other nations, kind of like for the greater good. We're all in this together. You're involved too, even though you're in another hemisphere, mainly the United States. You got to protect us because you're part of NATO. So Trump is using this as an opportunity to lean on NATO to get support with Iran. Because look, we're protecting your back door with Ukraine to keep Russia from moving into Western Europe. We need your help in Iran. And those nations initially deny or were not willing to help at all. And I honestly think Trump does these things. He baits them. I think ultimately he would like them to participate and kind of get that unity back. But at the same time, if it fails, it's ammo for him to keep pushing his agenda to get us out of NATO and say, look, we're fighting this war alone. And, and the way the other side can flip it is nobody wanted that war. And that's probably true. But but then that goes back to Ukraine. We probably didn't want to get involved with Ukraine because it's a proxy war with Russia. So kind of that tit for tat type thing, So honestly think that's probably why Trump is so frustrated is because of the amount of money we poured into Ukraine that was gifted by our government before he got into office. So I think he's trying to get them to pay back a little bit and use some of their resources instead of all of the United States. So, anyways, so Trump's leveraging now to get out of NATO, and that's already caused a direct response to the NATO nations starting to help out now. Because I think ultimately he would like to pull out of the region and then let Europe regulate that somehow and be in charge of it, oversee it, so we can just get the heck out of there because it's their part of the world. Why should we babysit it type thing? Trump is, if you're not paying it too close attention, Trump is really trying to make the Western Hemisphere all controlled, protected by the United States. When he first got into office, the first thing he did was working on the Panama Canal because China was encroaching on Panama Canal and leaning on Panama, and it looked like China was trying to take over the Panama Canal, and they were buying land in and around the inlets of the canal. So, and Trump was very much aware of it. And that was one of the very first things he worked on when he got into office was secure the Panama Canal, because we need that. We need the ability for our Navy to cross from each side. And we also need it so that we're not, so it's not a source of extortion for letting, ships come over from China with product. And now we're going to nail them with a huge fee in the canal because China owns it. And then anything that goes through the canal, it's going to tag onto consumer goods that we buy from whatever that ship came from, like China. So, and I'm sure it was mostly for military reasons, because that seems to be at the source for a lot of this stuff, just to strategically be able to protect this hemisphere. And, and that was another thing he's been leaning on, initially too, was how do I get Canada to be, cooperate more? And how do I get Mexico to work with us better? Because it's weak borders. And it becomes a staging area for people to cross the border into the United States that we don't want here. And they started leaning on them. And that's when all that talk was early on, when Canada becomes a country, you'll be a great governor, or, you'll be a great governor of one of the states or whatever like that. He says a lot of this tongue in cheek to get a reaction. It sounds serious when he says it, but it's also, he's kind of speaking his mind, hoping it's going to go that direction. Or it's to pressure them into getting a result. Strengthen your borders. You're weak. You're making it hard for us to keep our country tight. The borders tight. Did the same thing with Mexico, and as a result, they're doing better. And then what did he do? He went to Venezuela, and Venezuela was a squeeze play to get China and Russia out of there because they're buying oil there, and Venezuela has one of the largest oil reserves. So they're supplying oil to Russia and China. It's like, why are they in our hemisphere, selling all that oil to nations that aren't our allies? I mean, we're not at war with them, but you know what I mean? NATO countries would be our priority to service, not China and Russia, with countries that we're not allies with. We're at peace with them, but we're not necessarily allies. If you know what I'm getting at. So yeah, so I think Trump's trying to get out of NATO just to get the Western Hemisphere, the way he wants it, whether it's the eyes of a madman or if it's rational, that's subjective, of course, and then if you squeeze NATO out, then he doesn't have to listen to NATO about Greenland, because that's the other chunk of land he wants to make sure it doesn't fall into somewhere else or get under somebody else's control, like Russia or China, somebody that's one of the other superpowers. So all of this stuff is daisy chained together. I mean, you can tell this has been a plan that's been in the making since he's, in between his two terms. You can tell this is because he's been very coordinated with his plans, and it's just daisy chains all together. Start with the Panama Canal, closing our borders, and then Venezuela, and then Greenland, and now Iran, and then get out of NATO. And it really looks like he's trying to isolate the Western Hemisphere. He doesn't feel Western Europe's really of any benefit of us. Kind of use them while you can, because, like France and the UK tend to be giving into Muslim culture, Islamic Muslim culture, and taking over their countries. And you could see that with Rubio's speech. How many months ago? What was the council he spoke at? I don't remember. Um, but he made a kind of a heartfelt, deep speech to the Western European nations, saying, think about where you came from, and your Western values and the society you used to have. Kind of like laying out, you guys aren't what you used to be. You should, if you don't want to lose that, you should make a conscious effort to recapture that. And was encouraging them to follow the direction of America, join us on this journey to make our countries great again, type thing. And that was before the Iran war, and then Iran fired up, and I think Iran war was, there's a lot of theories about Israel and Netanyahu pulling Trump strings, and I don't know exactly if that's I don't necessarily believe that's all of it, because look at who Trump met with almost immediately when he took office was Qatar, and Qatar's neighbors with Iran, and I honestly feel that it was probably helped getting him elected, saying that he would do something about Iran. And Qatar made a huge donation to the United States, and that's when they gave us that 747. I think all of this has been calculated. The timing of it, I think, is however it fits into where it's at currently with the overall plan, whatever that may be, which I think may be just to get the United States free of all these countries so they can't impact us directly, reestablish manufacturing inside the United States, get our oil and fuel from our neighbors like Venezuela, if we need any outside oil, and sell our oil to our allies and help them, and isolate ourselves from like the Muslim nations and stuff like that, because it's counter-American, Muslim culture, Islam, and that's a threat to our way of life. Whether you want to agree with that or not, that's fine. You're never going to convince me otherwise, because it's basically a soft takeover of our country when you implement the laws of another nation, and a nation that was founded on something that was not even close to that. That's why I feel like that people that are kind of for that kind of dispel Christian culture, because that's the foundation. We're a Christian country, whether you love it or not. That's how our rules were set up. So to let a Muslim nation and then have influence over our government and then flip us out of our, Christian-based laws, which is kind of the foundation of our society, it's a soft takeover. It's not a conventional war, but it's a slow takeover. So I think that's what Trump is trying to protect us from, and protect Western culture and not let it get turned over. But anyways. So with that in mind, and we're kind of kind of getting off the headlines, but showing how this stuff ties together. Oh boy, that's pretty heavy. Let's get off of the Trump and the Iran stuff. But yeah, so as of now, there's a ceasefire with Iran. Hormuz, there's reports that the Strait of Hormuz is open. It's closed. Yeah, whatever. That changes day to day and who you listen to. But other topics, so much going on. Oh, one thing, one more Trump-related thing, and then we'll drop that all together. Melania spoke out against the media. Was that yesterday or was that Wednesday? But anyways, she made a firm statement to the media to cut the BS about the Epstein stuff and be more transparent, open it up type thing. And I admired that, as just her as a strong woman coming out and speaking and saying, quit dragging my name through the mud and associating me with Epstein. I got nothing to do with it. So I admire that for her as a strong woman to come out and say her piece on that. So it's just good to see. It shows you her character. Anyways, so other stuff happening this week that was of interest. We have locally in Minnesota, this is the most bizarre crap. It may sound bizarre hopefully it sounds bizarre to you guys if you hear it. So Minnesota is trying to open up gay bathhouses, sex venues is what it's called. And the Minneapolis City Council is voting on it. They were banned like back in the late 80s or early 90s when AIDS was rising up. And So we had, I think they call them bathhouses or something like that. And it's more associated with the gay community, the LGBTQ, blah, 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 whatever it is now. And with the rise of AIDS and that stuff, they're like, okay, we're going to ban this stuff. We're just going to outlaw it. And so they're trying to bring it back, of all things, and daisy chaining back to our foundation of our country, Christian culture type stuff. It's like, what a backwards things to bring back, bathhouses. It was basically, my view of it is, it's like a continuous orgy with a gate fee. We're going to have this controlled environment where it's safe for you to basically have orgies and gay, homosexual escapades with whoever you want. And we just, we're just going to make sure you don't get, it's like a place to do your secret stuff that you want nobody else to find out about type thing. It just sounds so dirty, because you think about it this way, prostitution is supposed to be illegal, but if two consensual adults go into this bathhouse or sex venue, then it's okay. Okay. How do you keep prostitution out of that? You know what I mean? You could just have men or women just hanging out, and somebody wanders in there and it becomes basically a prostitution site. I don't know how you keep it clear of that, how you keep it any type of, sanctimonious business of some sort. It just sounds so seedy and dirty. It's, call me a homophobe, I don't care, whatever. It just sounds like a quagmire of crap that nobody should have to deal with in their community. It's like, I don't understand. It doesn't make sense to me to have that. Why don't you go to a hotel? If you have your own place, why don't you meet up at your place? Like people who date or whatever, I don't get this sex venue stuff. So it sounds like it's a way to have casual hookups with multiple people. It just sounds like an orgy, and then we're going to have somebody at the gate to make sure we keep some people out. And it just sounds disgusting. But that looks like our city going backwards in my eyes. Just yuck. So, and then daisy chaining that to something else in the community. So, for the longest time, well, not forever, but, LGBT, that was, encompassing lesbian, boy, am I tongue tied, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender. So, so that's your acronym. I get it. Okay. So this Canadian person from the, like a Canadian lawmaker or something like that, just yesterday made this speech about whatever regarding that community. Let's just keep it in simple terms, and used a new acronym. I don't even know what to make of this. This is probably nobody in that community is ever going to watch this video, but if this is the new acronym, MMIWG2SLGBTQQIA+, you don't add credibility to the outside world. Keep adding onto it to accommodate everybody. It just makes it look like a joke. It looks so fluid that it doesn't sound organized. It doesn't sound structured. It just sounds like it's forever evolving. So it's hard to take it seriously, because why learn what it is now? Because in 5 minutes, it's going to be different. You go from this, which, okay, to me, that's all encompassing, because I don't have the subscription to keep up with that community as it changes. And then it's evolved to this in a few years. It's like you got to have a subscription to keep up what's going on in that community. And not that I don't like these people or whatever, but it's not my primary interest. It's not my interest to disparage them or make them feel bad or isolate them or bring any shame to them. But don't ever scorn me for using the wrong acronym, because I don't know what it is today. It's hard to take this seriously when you do this kind of crap. I don't know. I understand the part maybe on their side to just keep it open to everybody, but I don't know. In my simple mind, it seems like it can all apply to this. But who am I? I'm just a guy on the tube with nobody watching. Anyways, it's hard to take it seriously. I tend to notice that my natural response to things is probably the way most people see it, at least people like my side of the world, or the streets I go down, the street neighborhoods I live in, So it's just it's a lot to choke on, That's what she said, right? So, yeah. So Minnesota's going backwards. Another thing in Minnesota that's brought up recently is firearm stuff related. And I got to mention these guys because they're the only ones that really make a difference in Minnesota. And that's Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus. If you live in Minnesota and you're looking for, I'm not paid by them, I'm not sponsored. This is just to help the people that are helping us the most in Minnesota with Second Amendment law. So if you have any inclination to do more than just watching and you're ready to contribute money, help them first. They're the ones that actually apply the money towards legal, lawsuits and stuff to overturn, unconstitutional laws, essentially. So, yeah, that's my little endorsement of them. Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus. There's other groups that sound similar in name. Use the black and the yellow to kind of use as a quick reference to, that's their colors. And I don't think the other groups are using those colors. So that's kind of the easiest way to spot them. Like when you're digging around on social media, if you don't remember the exact order of the words, because you can put Minnesota Gun and it'll pull up 2 or 3 other places. The other places like to make a lot of noise on social media. I don't see them doing anything else than that. I'm not going to mention their names. I'm just going to say the one you should support, in my opinion, is Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus. So anyways, what's related to that in the news is there's a drive now to outlaw gun suppressors. And those of you not in firearms, I'll do a little explanation of suppressors. Suppressors are essentially like a muffler from a car. It quiets a firearm. It is not like Hollywood. I shouldn't say that 100%. There are ways to get Hollywood type results, meaning super quiet, spy type stuff, but 99% of the applications do nothing like that. 99% of the applications quiet it enough to be less obnoxious. Kind of like your neighbor with that little car with no muffler on it. He bounces it off the reveler. And when it had a muffler on it, you didn't notice that. And now he cut his muffler off and now you notice it. Well, that's kind of the same thing suppressors do with firearms. They make them less obnoxious. It's not super secret assassin stuff. Go out and, get away with some horrendous crime that nobody knows about because nobody heard the gunshots. That's just Hollywood lore that's been trickled into the gun community that doesn't really exist. Like I said, it kind of exists on some levels, but it's not the norm. But anyway, so Minnesota is trying to outlaw gun suppressors now, and my only point of bringing this up is just to dispel the myths from Hollywood and try to get some knowledge out there to some of you, is that suppressors, they make guns less obnoxious. That's what it does. It really helps the surrounding. It helps where they're discharged, where people go shooting, outdoor ranges, their property, where it's lawful for them to discharge guns, or even hunting. It quiets them down. I mean, gunshots can be extremely loud, and they can be quite annoying if you're shooting a lot. You can have neighbors that don't like you shooting, even though you're shooting on your property. And it's something that should be sold like batteries at the checkout aisle. I'm going to buy a suppressor today because I really want to protect my hearing. I don't want to annoy my neighbors. It's not for stealth mode. Honestly, it is. Watch videos on suppressors, watch some of the gun channels. You'll see that suppressors just quiet it. It lowers it by 20, 30 decibels. So it makes it significantly quieter, less obnoxious to you and your neighbors. So help dispel that myth a little bit, because it really does a disservice for what it really does. Like I said, it should be sold with your batteries at the checkout aisle. I'm going to buy a suppressor today. I'm tired of listening to this thing. So do your best to, like I said, the best people to support is Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus, if you're a Minnesota person. Another thing of interest today. Oh, where were we going to go to next? Oh, my little rant about if you're if you want to do this kind of stuff, YouTube and Facebook, and hopefully someday get paid for it, doing videos like this or doing some other type of video, whatever it may be. But um, it's really, really a tough road to go down. Niche stuff. You see the viral stuff that really works, and that's stuff that's, you know, it's almost like magic. You don't always truly believe it, but some of it is just timing and happenstance. People that win the lottery, it wasn't earned. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying people that have viral content aren't earned, but they also kind of, sometimes it's just a super creative person. They drop it out and it just works. The world wasn't ready. World wasn't expecting it, and it caught the world's attention. For the rest of us doing this kind of grind, it's really hard to make money at it. And I'm not saying this to beg for money, but just to let you know, it's not an easy grind. And one of the things I've struggled with is I've learned a lot of different trades in my life, and I've figured out most of them on my own without going to school and getting to a level where I could persevere and make money at it, and I pride myself on that. But one thing where YouTube is different, it's more like gambling. Your effort is not going to guarantee you any type of success. You can work as hard as you want. You think you're doing all you can to make it happen, and you won't necessarily get a direct reward for it. Just because you're working hard and you're grinding and you're pumping out videos doesn't mean anybody's going to watch them. So it's really a torturous thing to do to your mind sometimes, because like I got ADHD. And so, the ADHD head, brain, whatever, it likes to get quicker responses. So it can be painful to just pump stuff out and not get the response. I mean, I'm not even talking about making money, not the reward, but even getting the views. It's a fickle thing. You got to know what you're doing on some level, but it doesn't guarantee success. And to give you some idea of what it takes to get monetized, which is just for ad revenue, YouTube, you need 4,000 hours of watch time in the last 365 days, and you need 1,000 followers. Okay. Which isn't terrible. If you're doing trending topics, stuff that's of interest right now, your titles will get you traction right away. So like if you cover the Iran war, right as the Iran war happens, there's people looking for information on the Iran war, and you're writing a trend. It's hot right now. There's a good chance people are going to trickle onto you. But then it's content that's going to time out and be dead, because the Iran war, as you can see, it's only been going on 6-7 weeks, and the thing just is constantly evolving. So if you do Iran war and you don't put a date on it, it's just going to fall between the cracks. So not to discourage people from doing it, but the reality is there's no easy way to make money. The best way on YouTube to make money with content is to promote a business or service or something that you're selling, to direct people to it. And then the monetization at some point can just be an extra reward for your efforts. Because even when you get to AdSense and revenues from it's nickels or pennies sometimes per minute of view time. If you do a really good topic, it'd be like $20, $30, $40 a minute, but it's very particular on the topic. So, there's people that do it a year, and after a year of being monetized, even they make a couple $1,000s. Can you live off a couple $1,000s? No. Anyways, just be prepared for what you're getting into. If you ever want to go down this road, just understand it more and watch the creators that talk about the ins and outs of this, because it's not a guaranteed success. You got a strong ego and you really think you can do it, great. That's going to help drive you, but it doesn't guarantee success. So, and then just in perspective, like YouTube or Facebook, to do Facebook content, you need 10,000 followers. Yeah, 10,000 followers and 60,000 minutes of view time for your shorts in the last 60 days. That's 3,000 minutes of watch time a day for 60 days. And then I have 10,000 followers. So where that's good for is people already known in the world, celebrities. They're instantly going to get people to follow them just because of their name. And so it's easy for them to go in there, and then because they have a natural following. But if you're going to start there, it's brutal. I wouldn't do it, at least not for the reason of making money. Use it to market for your other stuff, and use it just to get extra reach. Don't think about it as a way to get rich or watch these influencers that, live the lavish lifestyle. There's not always a lot of truth behind what they do. Some of these people are just directing you to their OnlyFans and they're selling sex. So that always sells. Anyways, one more thing before we go. So we're going to close out with like the good news of the day. This gentleman deserves a lot of credit. This is Kirk Moore. So he's a principal at a high school in Oklahoma. So this story is to give you a little faith in the world that things aren't always as bad as it sounds. So Kirk was at his high school. Boy, I want to say it was Tuesday or Wednesday. It was earlier in the week. Don't quote me on that. But if you look up Kirk Moore or you look up Oklahoma school shooting, because you're not going to find it easily. And this is where I really, really hate mainstream media's bias. So I'll get into it. This is a very positive story, one that makes you feel better and makes you feel society isn't lost. So, like I said, Kirk Moore, he's a principal at a high school in Oklahoma. He intercepted a former student that was 20 years old, and I think his name was Victor Hawkins, and he had a firearm. And he was walking in to do a school shooting. And Kirk Moore intercepted him, was shot, but stopped it from happening, and without a firearm. And Kirk was shot, and he's still alive, and he's still with us, thankfully. So yeah, Kirk, thank you, sir. But it shows you how one person can make a difference. And, this person prevented let's just say a clickbaity headline that would have got a lot of traction because of a negative outcome. And then because it wasn't a positive outcome, because it was a positive outcome, it got ignored by legacy media. It's disgusting, that we don't prop these people up and recognize them and put them out in front of everybody. I would have, for my own personal satisfaction, I wish he was armed to help further the cause, to show that when you're defending something like a school and you have a weapon, you can stop these events from happening. But we can't nitpick this because lives were saved, and that's ultimately what we need. So yeah, one person can make a difference, just like you can, Kirk, thank you, sir. So yeah, we're kind of wrapping it up here. That's about the biggest things I can think of from the week. So we got long form content also. I want to do daily headline stuff because there's so much happening. I don't know what to do with this channel. I'm just digging around, trying to figure it out. Put something in the comments. Anything of interest of where you would like to see. If you first, you got to like me doing it. So if you like me doing videos, give me some suggestions. If you don't, that's fine. We get it. Not everybody's the same cup of tea, but yeah. Was there anything else? That's the biggest thing I could think of. That's the stuff that point out with me. Also, we got some talks. We got some interviews coming up again. My friend Darwin down in the Caribbean. We go pretty deep down the rabbit hole with, oh my gosh, some of the stuff I have a hard time processing, but Darwin's a good dude, and I like having him on, but some of the stuff is hard for me to get into. Let's just put it to you that way. Also got some ADHD stuff coming up. I got a friend from high school that we're going to try to do an ADHD conversation, kind of talking about it and stuff that works, stuff that doesn't work, that kind of stuff. And then I did a Minnesota gun law video not that long ago that's doing okay with my attorney friend, Thomas Gallagher. We'll do some more stuff with him in the future. Maybe I'll do one with him soon talking about the suppressor stuff since that's a hot topic right now in Minnesota. Maybe I'll try to get him on next week. So yeah, trying to do some live conversations, trying to do some headline stuff, and I like doing like doing funny shorts. Those sometimes work, don't work. My humor isn't accepted by everybody, but I kind of find that people kind of on the same wavelength kind of like the same humor sometimes. So, but then when you're not focused on a exact niche, YouTube has a hard time pushing you. So it's like, I don't know. It's just, it's the ADHD brain not wanting to latch on to one direction because it gets boring, probably, possibly. Although I do have another channel that's directly related to a hobby of interest, and I poured myself into it for a year, and did 82, 85 videos, something like that. Not all of them were long content, but most of them were, and it's so yeah, with ADHD, that was pretty big accomplishment to pour myself into that and not get monetized, not make any money off of it. I was doing it for the love of the hobby, which is if you're doing it for that reason to be on YouTube and, push out these videos and stuff, God bless you. You're doing it for fun. Then maybe someday you'll get the reward of, some sort of money from it. But yeah, so I focused on that for a year, pretty hardcore, but I was completely new to YouTube. So I had no idea what I was doing. But I did like the process of the learning. That's what caters to my brain. I like new challenges, and it stayed a challenge for a long time. So I'm not the type that flips them really quick, meaning, oh, 6 minutes, I'm done, new topic. No, I have the ability to commit myself to much longer times, but yeah. And so then you just get the rewards of, are people watching your videos? That kind of stuff. You watch the view count go up and you just have to remind yourself, yep, you're reaching people. But I got to the point where I just plateaued and was just like, it started to kill the hobby for me, and I lost interest in the hobby completely. So it was just, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the camera and I'm looking at the monitor. I got to turn the monitor off so I look at the little monitor. But anyways, so yeah, it just became emotionally draining to keep working at it when the love of the hobby started to diminish, and then you're not getting any financial, shouldn't say getting any financial reward. I had one subscriber, Ash. So Ash, if you see this, thank you, sir, because he tends to follow me in a few different avenues. So Ash might watch this someday. He's a Canadian. He became a subscriber, and it was like a couple dollars a month or something like that. So YouTube actually owes me more money from subscribers than it does from my videos, which that was the ironic thing where it just kind of slapped me in the face. It's like, okay, you worked for a year, did 80 some videos. And I don't think this isn't a self-righteous thing. I don't think I deserve money from YouTube. I'm just saying that I might not fit the mold for doing that, meaning that's probably not going to get the reward I want. It's probably unrealistic. Basically saying that my expectations are probably unrealistic, not trying to say it's a bunk system or whatever, because there are people that make money off of it, obviously. And I just may not be that person to do that. So yeah, like I said, just got to the point where it was just burning out, 80 some videos, and didn't reach monetization. That was my goal, is to reach monetization. And then I found out monetization can go backwards, meaning, so if you cross that threshold of 4,000 subscribers, 4,000 hours of watch time and your 1,000 subscribers, and it starts to go backwards, it's calculated continuously. It's not you won the race on monetization, and now you could just let that channel idle forever and make something off of it. No, if you stop getting 4,000 hours of watch time per year, now you're no longer qualified to be monetized. So they want you to maintain your channel. And then I was like, oh, there's not even a reward to even get to the finish line and just say, yeah, I did it. I got to monetization. I get $3 a month from, YouTube. So they want you to maintain it. They want you to keep putting content out. So it's like, I got to drop this like a bad habit, because the burnout is just It's just, and what triggered me the most was one of my lines of work is I do tree removal, for residential properties. So, you got a bad tree in your backyard, whatever. I take it down. That pays really well. And I had a job coming up when I had this epiphany, and it was like, like a day's labor. Well, I shouldn't say that. Yeah, I mean, literally, it was probably 8 to 10 hours worth of labor, and it was almost all labor. The only expense was basically fuel for the job. And I think I bid it out at like $1,600 or something like that. And I spent like 8 to 10 hours on it. And I'm like, dude, you can make money, daily that doesn't even compare to what YouTube owes you $26 for a subscription from one follower, which I'm grateful for. But YouTube hasn't paid you a dime for a year's worth of work, 4,000 hours of watch time, 850 subscribers, 80 videos. I have skills that are much more lucrative, and that's where YouTube feels like gambling. It's like, how do you want to waste your time? Because time is the only real asset we have, and how we allocate it and who we give it to, it's precious, So if you, make time for a person, person should be worthy of your time and special to you, and hopefully they appreciate it. So to give your time, I mean, granted, I didn't give them a year of my life. I gave them how many thousands of minutes of video to know basically nothing in return. So, I mean, that's the gambling part, hoping your stuff is so interesting, it's just going to take off. So that's the gambling part. But yeah, if you're driving a business and using this for marketing, that's where it makes a difference. And then hopefully someday you get monetized, like I said. And then, especially if you're catering, your market is specific, then you may get even sponsorships from products in that industry. And then it can really help you, because then you can get products for your business and be endorsements and that kind of stuff and get reduced costs or free samples. And so, yeah, to do this for ad revenue, if that's your goal, it's really a waste of time. Use your time better. If you know a skill, you'll make more money off a skill. But if your skill is making videos, yeah, maybe you'll make something. Anyways, that's enough of that rant. We've almost gone an hour. I was really trying to get there. It's 53 minutes. I was surprised I stretched it out that long. I mean, I know I could stretch it out longer. We could ramble on if that was the goal and just talk incoherently for minutes. Oh, Lordy. So, yeah, you can find me on the Facebook under my name, John Peterson. I don't hide that crap. You can find me on Instagram under my name, also John Peterson. Might be under my other channel name. I'm not sure. You can find me on X. So, yeah, I got to get back to work. I got to go do the stuff that pays the bills because this doesn't. I would love it to. I love doing this kind of stuff. I have a lot of fun doing it. I wish we could I really want to work on getting more people to talk to. And that's one thing I've gotten from my business. I've met a lot of interesting people from different walks of life, like Tom Galler, lawyer, Darwin Hallstrom, he's a writer. People have been on the channel already. And so I'd like to kind of do a series of just talking to the men in my life that I know, and women too, and just to have different professions and hear about their experiences and just kind of enlighten the world about other careers and other facets of life, make this kind of a broader reach. Oh, Lordy. Still couldn't get to an hour. Can't even drag it out 6 more minutes. I don't want to punish you any more than I have. Oh, Lordy. So, yeah, have fun with it if you can. But we'll give one more salute to our man of the week, Kirk Moore. Like I mentioned earlier in this video, Oklahoma high school principal potentially saved his students from a school shooting. He intercepted a former student with a firearm, intercepted him, subdued him, whatever, and then was shot in the process. He's alive. He's going to make it, but here's somebody that made the difference, and the media is not giving him coverage. It's a travesty. We need to salute these people to remind the people that the world isn't a piece of crap. So anyways, thank you all for watching. If you made it this far, God bless you. You must be somewhat like me to watch this whole damn thing. And if you watch my whole videos with Darwin, you can go watch more of Darwin's stuff on Sater's Soul Sailing. So yeah, God bless y'all. Hope you guys had a great week. Have a fun, safe weekend. Here in Minnesota, we got thunderstorms on the way tonight and tomorrow. We got temperatures in the 80s on Sunday, which is wonderful because right now we're in the 40s. We've been bouncing in and out of tolerable weather, or I should say great weather. We had 70s there for, and living here, you get that false optimism that things are, oh, winter's over. And then it goes down to 30 degrees and it snows. And we can get, oh my gosh, we can get a blizzard. We've had blizzards in late April, and we're not even halfway through April yet. So we're really not out of the woods yet. So you get that false hope when you get that 70-degree day in late March. And it's like, yeah, early spring, it's over. Yeah, it's not. You just hate winter here, and then you get slapped in the face with something good, and you're like, okay, it's done. No, it's not. So anyways, we got some turbulent weather this weekend, and that's supposed to be nice next week. So hoping to get out and start cutting trees again. I got tree jobs lined up. I might do some videos on that just to show that type of work and what I do. I don't know. So I've learned a lot of different trades and enough to make a living at all of them, like 16, self-taught. And I pride myself on the ability to do that. So I might cover some of that stuff and just show the diversity of things I've learned. I could build a car just about from scratch, the welding, the body work, the wiring, the plumbing, that kind of stuff. Pretty decent mechanic. I'm starting to work on carpentry. I'm working on building a mini house. That's new to me. Carpentry is. I haven't ever done carpentry before. My dad's done it. I just never had an interest in it, but I can do all sorts of stuff with steel. I can do fabrication. I can do welding. Went to aircraft school to work on airplanes and was certified to do that. I did paintless dent repair. I did custom auto body and painting, like, show car type stuff. Worked for some really, really good body men painters in Minnesota. Learned a lot from them. Didn't ever get to their level. I won't try to BS you with that. I'm not a great painter, but I can do some really good work, and I pride myself on that. Oh my gosh, what else have I done? I had a motorcycle school. I have landscaping business, tree removal, tree work. Oh gosh, I got my CDL now, so I can drive commercial vehicles. It's all this blue collar type stuff mostly. I was a boiler operator. I was a building maintenance guy. It makes it really good to not have to rely on outside sources to fix things in your life. It makes it horrible for ever establishing yourself enough in a career that you're going to be able to retire. And that was the hopes with doing YouTube, is getting out of the physical stuff and maybe find some niche that I fit into and then sell it on the internet. Maybe cater to other ADHD people that just their mind goes all over the frickin' place. But yeah, anyways, thanks for watching. Hope you guys are well. God bless you. Have a great weekend.